What was your initial reaction to a shooting at the White House Correspondents' dinner?
My first reaction, of course, is that I'm glad that no lives were lost. And of course, thoughts to the law enforcement officer who was shot in this process. But my second is that we live in this time of incredibly escalated political violence. And a lot of that really draws its lineage back to the man who was the target of this attack. We've seen over the last decade U.S. presidents, U.S. vice presidents, and the entire American political ecosystem become much more tense and much more really vulnerable to some of these threats because of the rhetoric that Donald Trump has been unleashing on the American political system. The other thought that I had as we go into this is what the Trump administration has done to make it more difficult to recruit and retain the good quality Secret Service agents that are required to keep this level of security. We've seen as they've been hiring ICE agents that are underqualified, that have far-right ideological ties, it's becoming harder and harder to keep the really exceptional Secret Service agents who serve presidents of every political stripe. It's becoming harder and harder to keep them in their jobs to do exactly the work that you're seeing on your screen now.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit more about the Secret Service and I guess what's next for them, because we've heard from the president in the hour or so after the incident praising the Secret Service and other authorities. They're praising the security detail. It's unfathomable, what might have happened had this suspect made it through that checkpoint, and it's obviously exceptional work by them that he wasn't able to get inside that room, but there will no doubt now be questions about how someone was able to get that close to the dinner, allegedly with 2 guns and several knives.
Absolutely. And Director Karan, who's the new director of the Secret Service, mentioned that in the press conference not long after President Trump. Secret Service is really facing a crisis right now. We've seen several attempted assassinations on President Trump. They were really put under strain with the increased risk that President Obama faced, largely because of his race. These type of security incidents that you're seeing play out in this ballroom and that we've seen play out over the last weeks and months, these are things that Secret Service trains for, that they spend a lot of time building plans around. I have been in 2 or 3 dozen of these type of events where the White House staff works with Secret Service to figure out every single element of where these checkpoints are, of where you're going to move the president, how the motorcade leaves in an emergency like this. There are good protocols in place. But I think the question again comes down to how do you retain and maintain the Secret Service agents that can continue to do this job under increasingly dangerous situations. And I think it's worth noting the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, under which the Secret Service falls, is currently still unfunded. We are still in a partial government shutdown in which the administrative element, so the agents are still being paid, but the administrative side of the U.S. Secret Service is still not being paid and hasn't been for several months now. So it's becoming harder and harder to keep these agents in their positions and to continue doing the good job that is unfortunately much more required of them now than it ever has been.
Yeah, the president acknowledged as well earlier that, his job is very dangerous and as is the job of the Secret Service. It's obviously still very early days. We don't yet have a, definitive idea of this suspect's motivations or indeed the target of this attack, though the president says that he assumes that it was him. He said he was keen to get this dinner back on track after this incident. It's quite reminiscent, don't you think, of his fight, fight, fight attitude after the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania 2 years ago. So I'm curious what you make of the way the president has sort of been framing this incident in the hours since what was undoubtedly a terrifying night for him.
Yeah, there are a couple of things here. One, I thought it was worth noting that the president did not come out and immediately assign political motivation to this shooting. I think I was watching that press conference, holding my breath, waiting for Donald Trump to opine and to assign a political motive to this shooting that, of course, there's no evidence for at this point. We don't know what was behind this. We don't know why this person did what they did. And I was at least expecting Donald Trump to come out and offer that without any evidence, and he didn't. I think it was notable that he maintained a quite subdued attitude and quite subdued response in that press conference. One thing that also struck me was he did take this as an opportunity to push his new White House ballroom and to say that this shooting offered even more of a reason to do that. And in that way, I do think that this is reminiscent of the shooting in Butler, where Donald Trump is going to try and use this in some political way. We don't quite know what that is, and I think we'll be seeing signals of that in the coming hours and days ahead about how exactly he's going to try and use this. But I at least don't hold a lot of hope that he's going to use this as a unifying, rallying call for the country and for the world to tone down political violence. He's going to find a way to use this, and I think the question is, what exactly is that eventual target going to be? Because that's what we saw coming out of Butler. The assassination attempt in Butler, I think, is one of the things that turned around that election and really swung it for Donald Trump. It was not just the assassination attempt, but what Donald Trump and his team were able to do with the messaging coming out of that assassination attempt. And I think you're going to see something similar in the coming days and hours ahead.
Corey Alpert, thank you so much for your time and insights this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.